Time for the final animal from the Crocodilia Coast DLC, the Desmatosuchus. This is an herbivorous, terrestrial crocodile fella. Not actually a crocodile. Crocodilomorph, pseudotsuchian, whatever. I don't know the term exactly. I don't know exactly where these guys fall, rather, is the better way to say that. Anyway, let's look at them. Let's end up talking about croc phylogeny. Of course, it's got a very ankylosaurid build with that armor. The babies. This is a good spot to briefly talk about them. So you can see here, you know what? Actually seeing it in game, especially the armor, is a lot different than the ankylosaurids and notosaurs that we have in this game. This like smoother back with the spikes on the side like that. Pretty different. So it actually doesn't feel like it's simply kind of a reskin like Sauropelta or something, which I quite like. You can of course see that the feet are quite different. Again, it's going to be, I assume it looks to me, and I assume it should be essentially flat-footed, right? Which is what it seems to be doing there in the back. It's also got this like upturned nose that gives it kind of this like shovel snout type thing. I don't know if I've seen people say that's like speculated for like a digging adaptation, which makes sense. I don't know how much support there is for that beyond the anatomy. Let's look at some more footage. Yeah, there's a good look at the nose. Yeah. Yeah, let's go. Oops. Yeah, you can kind of see the way the foot works there, right? Yeah, that was like that step there. When he makes that step, you can see it's very flat-footed. I really appreciate that they went through the effort for the posture of the legs to be different than the dinosaurs. Like, it's a fundamental kind of difference comparing a crocline animal to a dinosaur, and they actually do feel different, which is both good and impressive. I want to watch this segment one more time. I want to look at the articulation of the armor. This is a thing that's problematic with a lot of the ankylosaurid models, but the ankylosaurids are largely from JWE1, so they've suffered through the ages. Social animation. So the arm articulation looks good in that it looks actually pretty stiff along the spine, which it probably should be. It doesn't have any weird, like, very obvious stretching like some of the other animals with armor on the back do. Um, Oddly enough, the one that comes to mind the worst is Gigantospinosaurus, which doesn't even have a fully armored back. Um, and yeah, I paused here because I want to talk about this coloring. That's a really nice like splattering of coloring. We complain a lot in this fandom about Frontier splotches, which is when Frontier makes an animal and they just put splotches of color on it and it looks like garbage. This guy technically has splotches, but because they're arranged on this like horizontal row right underneath the armor, it actually looks good and like natural as opposed to just splattered garbage. So yeah, this looks great. I also like that there's like a line of color across the top on the armor there you can see. And maybe like a ring of color on these like neck spines. Yeah, I always think there's more to these videos than there is because they have the freaking end card takes up a full third of the video almost. All right, well that is a pretty cool looking animal. I'm very happy with what I see there. We can also take a look at the page here, the animal page. That's a word that is correct. The database. That's the word I'm looking for. We can take a look at the database here on the website, which now has all of the Crocodilia Coast animals on it. We had Shoni, of course, get revealed yesterday. I didn't cover that in its own video. We'll cover it after this. There's the Desmatosuchus, slightly off the screen. Let me fix that. Ta-da! So yes, a good look at the male-female and the juvenile as a family unit, allowing you to tell the differences more easily. Um, I'm watching the armor here, especially with the side-to-side motion. I think the rigging looks pretty good, especially for this game. It looks like the patterning on the armor is kind of different. The presumably the male has this like really interesting pattern where he's got these like kind of like what are they like Rorschach patterns almost like these mirrored like globs along the spine outlined by this lighter color. That's really cool. And then the female kind of has a different take on that where it's more muted. Assuming these are like the same color. These could technically be different colors. Um but yeah, no, this looks cool. I like the patterning. His little beady eye makes me think there's not a single thought going on in that head. All right, Desmatosuchus is a distant relative to modern crocs with a much smaller skull, and herbivorous diet, and more defensive adaptations. Its carapace is formed of two rows of bony scutes, scales like armor. Two large shoulder spikes prove an effective deterrent to potential ambush. Sorry, potential predators. Where did I get ambush from? So yeah, I guess the idea here must be that these are the scutes here paired along the spine. So unlike it in Kylosaur, where it has like kind of smaller rows of scutes, I guess Desmato has two bigger like plates almost along the back, maybe. Famed paleontologist Edward Drinker Cope first uncovered the fossils of Desmatosuchus in 1892, naming the species Episcoposaurus haploceras. Some years later, in 1920, Ermine Cowles Case discovered fossils at a different site and described them as a new species again, Desmatosuchus spirensis. A review of these two species in 1953 established that the two studies were describing the same species and validated both discoveries under the singular name of Desmatosuchus. Why did Desmato win over Episcoposaurus? Usually the first name wins. That's interesting. Interesting. I wonder. I mean, maybe usually the case of where one loses out over the other, and it's not the one that came first that wins. It's because the one that came second was used a lot. Like that's what happened to Tyrannosaurus. So I guess Desmatosuchus, as Desmatosuchus, must have been in the literature and stuff in the early 1900s a bit, and Episcoposaurus was probably just a footnote. That's probably what happened. This is, of course, a Triassic animal, and its dense armor would have been effective defense against carnivores relative, like against its carnivorous relatives, like the Postosuchus. Wait, yeah, okay, against its carnivorous relative, the Postosuchus, specifically a singular Postosuchus. Yes, yeah, very cool to get more Triassic representation. This pack is like really good for Triassic representation, Posto and Desmato, um, and Shoni. I think Shoni might be Triassic. So that's really cool. Triassic period is woefully underrepresented in this game. Still woefully underrepresented, even with these new Triassic animals. And just generally underrepresented in like dinosaur media. The Triassic is a really cool, weird period with a lot of cool shit going on and a lot of cool animals running around. I really hope we see more of it. I would love like a Triassic pack that has like a prosauropod, maybe another type of theropod, and then like another croc or something thrown in. I think that'd be cool. Um, we could speculate about that in the future, maybe. Uh, so yeah, the Desmatosuchus was a specialized herbivore with its peg-like teeth and narrow shovel-like snout, allowing it to dig for energy-rich roots and tubers. Is he digging for the energy root from Pokemon so he can heal 200 HP? Damn. Well, grazing, it likely traveled in herds as a further defense against ambushing carnivores. Hopefully, I actually have the healing value of energy root correct. Otherwise, fake fan, tourist. All right. We watched the video, but we do have some screenshots here. We'll check those out. Let's look at the info first. Ground paleobotany, yeah, that makes sense. Batch size 1 to 3. Small batch size. Length is 5 meters. Height is 1.5. So a smaller, but not the smallest animal. And yeah, the screenshots do another good job of, yeah, there you can really tell there ain't a thought in those eyes. That's very, very cute. Really good job of showing off the beak thing going on there too, making his face look properly like a shovel. Very cool. There's a bunch of them hanging out. Yep. I like the almost grimace on the little ones in the front. Ugh. Ugh. in the road with a posto. This is fantastic. We're just gonna go ahead and save that image there. Download that. That's fantastic. Also, Postasuchus confirmed can briefly be quadrupedal. He's got a little paw on the ground there. Interesting. Another I like when they put little secretive reveals in some of these shots and stuff. Also, this guy here booking it down the road. These two ladies just look like they're speed walking. All right. Cool. Very cool animal. Very excited to see you come to the game. All right. Next animal. Let's talk briefly about. Nope. Nope. This one, Shonisaurus. We're not going to spend too much time on this. Obviously, returning animal. We talked well enough about the returning animals last video with the sticks. It is in fact Triassic. Okay. Big thing here is dimorphism. We can see the patterns are actually pretty substantially different between the two adults, and the baby is spotted, which is an interesting vibe. Purple baby confirmed. Everybody loves the purple, so great. Yeah, so we got maybe this is the male, the one with like the more defined stripes down the body and like this splotch of color behind the eye, versus this one, which has just kind of the upturned part of coloring underneath the mouth, but doesn't get into the big splotch. Patterns look good. I mean, that's kind of what we expect. Yeah, I suppose, interestingly enough, the dimorphism is pretty minor on Desmato, huh? Nobody in this pack is like all that dimorphic. Like maybe there's a size difference, which is a weirdly underutilized aspect of dimorphism in this game, but it's too hard to tell because they're doing different animations. Like you could see the front limbs are bent on this one and they're erect on the other one, so you can't really compare the actual height on the web page. They're also positioned at different ground levels. Maybe the spines are different. I could also convince myself that the spines are a little longer on the left, a little more stubby on the right. But like again, that could just be angles. It's really hard to like actually say anything. Um I mean not every animal needs dramatic dimorphism, but like a lot of the dimorphism we do have should be better. So there's kind of always keeping an eye out for a new animal showing up that actually has interesting dimorphism, and they don't tend to exist. Shoni, batch size 1 to 2. Yeah, it's probably the same as what it was in the last game, presumably. We do have a little screenshot. I mean, like the baby pattern is pretty good. The little spots, that's fun. It makes it is a pattern that feels like a baby's pattern, right? Kind of evoking the Gallimimus from Jurassic Park a little bit, the spotted version of that, which is a juvenile, even though it's not in this game for some reason. Um, yeah, we should be able to check out the trailer as well. There's not really anything in it, but we'll watch it for completion's sake. All right, here it is, Shonisaurus. Oh my god, it's a lagoon animal. I would have never guessed. Yep. It has babies. Wow. I mean, it's a good looking animal. It's good that it's come back. I don't need to say it again, but good that it's back. Unfortunate that it's DLC. That's all we'll say about that in this video. Finally, we have a behind the scenes article from the other day designing species for Crocodilia Coast. Um, so this is just basically an article that goes through talking about the design process for generating these animals, basically saying they look at real animals, real crocodiles and gators for the vibes for the Desmatosuchus. This is all like focused on the Desmatosuchus. You get this like development art showing kind of, I guess, a look at like the preliminary concept of the animal essentially. I'm not gonna, yeah, we're not gonna read everything because a lot of this is like pretty basic, pretty standard assumption stuff you can think about for how these kind of animals are made, especially when they have such a realistic late analog, i.e., an alligator/crocodile. Study skeletal reconstructions. Again, that's stuff we've heard from them before about their animal designs. Drew inspiration from modern relatives. Yup. And then yeah, consider differences between adults and juveniles, like looking at locomotion, uh, and looked at real world references for smaller and younger variations, like caimans and dwarf crocodiles. But like real gators and crocodiles have babies. You could just look at those. It's fine. This is not actually a critique. It's just kind of weird to me that they like picked a different animal to model to like, study for the juvenile versus just studying the juvenile. And yeah, there's more concept art for the juvenile. Um, yeah, they need to make sure the juvenile matches the adult. Well, you could do this by studying the juveniles of the animals you studied for the adult. Huh? It's fine. Uh, yeah, concept art of the juvenile, adult female development art. So now we're getting to like, the color palette stuff, talking about how they pick the colors for it. I think the color pattern here with the striping on the tail and like the striping matching the scoots and stuff looks really good. Um, yeah, inspired by real animals makes sense. Put together a palette of browns, yellows, creams, and even blacks, grays, and greens to design natural looking patterns. So we're gonna have like a sounds like a pretty natural color palette for the Dinosuchus, which makes sense. This out of all the crocs, this is the one that's most like a modern croc visually. So it makes sense for the color palette to evoke that kind of in the same way the like the megalodon evoked really realistic colors for the most part. I would still hope that they had a couple of wild cards mixed in. I think that should kind of be the standard for an animal, right? We have 12 base colors, and almost always you have like four of those 12 colors that just kind of look like four of the other 12 colors with slightly different tints. I think if you wanted a natural color palette and you went ahead and gave us 8 or 10 good natural colors and then just threw in 2 to 4 wild cards, that would appease everybody. That'd be fun and good. Like you don't need three different shades of brown, right? Like if you want brown, yellow, cream, black, gray, and green, that's six. And then you could put in a couple of different shades of those colors, or even four different shades of those colors. You still have room for a couple of crazy colors. Again, not a true criticism. Again, this animal's fantastic. It's just, one of those things where like you could make it even better. Um Also had to consider dimorphism, difference between male and female patterning. Female Deinosuchus has more consistent coloring with any stripes or splotches blending together, whereas the male is flashier, more distinct patterns and coloring. This is every animal in the game. This is the dimorphism they do for every single animal. It's either this and or horns. I don't know why they even need to put this in the article because it's not different. Um, Striking the balance between realistic and interesting can be difficult. Try to walk the line. Yeah, yeah, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, there's the juvenile pattern development art. Again, it's kind of the same as the adult, but the stripes on the body look a little more defined, a little more like linear, given kind of a rib pattern there. Of course, you don't actually know how well these translate to what they look like in the game. Um, and then they talk about the animation work here, the death roll, incredible, incredible animation. We saw that, of course, in the original trailer for the Dinosuchus. Um, Fantastic. So there is talk about how the Dinosuchus, I almost said Dinochirus, I caught myself, but it was there. The death roll animation seen here probably requires like a new bone in the skeleton of every other animal in the game. So one argument people have made about the price point of this DLC is that the Dinosuchus, to enable it to do this grab by the head and do this death roll, required re-rigging every animal in the game to accommodate for that, which is basically just potentially just adding an attachment point for that, but it still work. And some people have argued that's why the price is higher. It's not because we got 5 animals, 2 of which is returning, as much as it is that this pack required an extra amount of animation work, which is true, certainly true. We have three extremely unique animals that required new rigs. Even if they reused some parts of the skeleton between them or something, they're still very distinct. And like definitely Posto is different than Dinosuchus. So I would believe there was a substantial amount of animation work put into this above and beyond the typical pack. Um, but like it needs to be there for this to like really sell these animals properly. So it had to be done, right? Uh, so yeah, just describing the death roll, diving deep. Spent a great deal of time building family units for Shoni and Sticks with the addition of brand new juveniles. Begin the design process for juvenile by studying the fossils. Fantastic fossils on the Jurassic Coast right there in the UK. Yeah, they do have good access to specifically these like aquatic marine reptile fossils in the UK. So basically, yeah, look at fossil records and the existing adult model to shape the new juvenile. I mean, yeah, the juveniles. I feel like most of the work for the juveniles is really just shrinking down the adult for a lot of these animals. Like we have a few exceptional juveniles, but for a lot of them, they just feel like they're a shrunk down, repatterned adult, pretty much. Like smooth off the face, right? You like shrink down the beak a little bit, increase the size of the eye proportionally to the head, and then it's a baby. Um, I do like the babies look fine, right? These, to be clear, I've criticized a few of the babies in this game for looking really rough. Shoni and Sticks look fine. Um, Yeah, as we bring them back in game species, develop an in-depth process, develop juveniles, delivering more fully formed family units. Okay, sure. And the in-depth process is probably taking the existing rig for that type of animal and then, fitting a new model to it that's based on both the adult for the new animal and the baby model for the previous creature. So you start with your basic plesiosaurid, you add the fins, you add the little tail fluke, you redesign the face so that it looks like the adult, and make sure the fins are the right shape, and you're kind of done. Whole new range of animations, social interactions. Yeah, they do need like new animations. A work in progress Shoni juvenile animation, just swimming around the adult in a little loop. Don't we already essentially have this for somebody else? Maybe. And maybe that little bit where it comes up and looks at the adult is different too. That probably is part of the animation given that it's here in this. Um, Sticks, they are inspired by tropical fish and modern bioluminescent species. Designed new skins for the adult, male, and juvenile. Bioluminescence was fun to experiment with. So is this the male here with this like much more? I think so. I think there's a much more patterning on the body than we're used to with Sticks. There's a juvenile, of course, with the little dots. Looks fine. Yeah, that's the end of the article. So like a good little peek behind the scene at like design process stuff, but this is still marketing material ultimately at the end of the day, right? Like that's yeah. It's good that they put these out though. It's fun to see some of the how the sausage is made. I use that expression quite a lot, but it's good. I think that's all I really have to say about the reveals today. The Desmato looks fantastic. The pack looks great. It's probably a little unfortunate that this happens to be the pack that is mired in controversy with the price point and the returning animals, because these Crocs really deserve a good chance to shine on their own strength, and a lot of the discourse is being overshadowed by the finances of the whole situation. Um, I mean, as it should be, right? This is a point that people should be talking about, but is what it is. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say. A little rambly. Let's just wrap it up here.